Om Namo Shivaya, Guruji Sada Sahai. Salutations to the auspicious ones. Ever since we've come in Guruji's Sharan, उनकी मेहर हमारी सारी फैमिली पर रही है, चाहे वो बबली आंटी हों, मैं हूँ, हमारे बच्चे हों, इवन हमारे ग्रैंड चिल्ड्रन तक उनकी मेहर हमेशा रहती है। हमारा कनेक्शन गुरुजी से बहुत स्ट्रांग है, क्योंकि हम उनके साथ हमेशा कनेक्टेड रहते हैं, उनके साथ हमारी हमेशा कम्युनियन होती रहती है, और इसीलिए उनकी ग्रेस हम सब पर है। और बहुत बार उनकी हेल्प मैंने देखा है आती है थ्रू ड्रीम्स, थ्रू विजन्स, थ्रू मैसेजेस सेंड टू डिफरेंट संगत, जो कि हमें उसको कन्वे करते हैं, और जगह जगह पे गुरुजी हमारी सहायता करते रहते हैं। आपने अभी बबली आंटी का सत्संग सुना, उनके थायराइड के बारे में, और वो जब से वो उन्होंने रिमूव किया, अब कितने साल हो गए हैं, उसके बाद आज तक उनको उसकी कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुई है थायराइड की। ऐसे ही मेरा भी एक सत्संग है जिसमें कि गुरुजी ने मुझे एक बड़ी सीरियस बीमारी से कैसे बचाया, वो मैं आपके सामने रखता हूँ। ये पिछले साल मिडल ऑफ द ईयर की बात है। मैं फॉर नो नोन रीजन आई स्टार्टेड फीलिंग वेरी वीक, बड़ा डिजी फील करना शुरू किया, एज इफ आई एम लूजिंग माई बैलेंस, आई वाज फीलिंग आउट ऑफ सॉर्ट्स, और समझ नहीं आ रही थी कि ये क्यों हो रहा है। इस दौरान ये बबली आंटी ने मुझे बताया नहीं, उनको एक दिन गुरुजी का ड्रीम आया और उन्होंने उनको बोला कि अंकल दी तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, इन्हां दा ध्यान रखना और घबराने की लोड़ नहीं, सब ठीक हो जाएगा। अब इसके बाद मुझे एक इनविटेशन आया एक सत्संग करने का फ्रॉम संगत इन सिंगापुर, जो रेगुलर सत्संग करते हैं। उन्होंने रिक्वेस्ट की कि भाई आप अपने सत्संग सुनाए। मैंने कहा ठीक है। अब ये देखिए, जो सत्संग सुनता है और जो सत्संग सुनाता है, दोनों को लाभ होता है, ये तो जानी हुई बात है। तो उन्होंने टाइम और डे फिक्स किया, तो हमने कहा ठीक है। और कुछ ही टाइम बाद फिर उनकी मुझे फ़ोन आई और वो कहने लगे कि कोई बड़ी पुरानी संगत है गुरुजी की चंडीगढ़ में, उनको सपना आया गुरुजी का, और उन्होंने कहा कि भाई ये जो नेक्स्ट सैटरडे का संगत है ये आपने करना है। अब देखिए, और गुरुजी चाहते थे कि मैं उस संगत को सुनूं, तो मैंने वो नहीं किया और मैं उसको सुना। इसके बाद इसके दौरान मुझे एक रेगुलर रूटीन चेकअप के लिए हॉस्पिटल जाना था। सो आई वेंट फॉर दैट। नॉर्मली वहाँ पे वो मेरा ब्लड टेस्ट करते हैं, और जहाँ ब्लड टेस्ट होता है इट इज ऑन 3rd फ्लोर, एंड आई हैव नो प्रॉब्लम क्लाइंबिंग दोज 3 स्टोरीज। मैं हमेशा ऐसे ही जाता हूँ। I avoid trying to take the lift, because आजकल के टाइम में पता नहीं होता lift who's touched it, and whatever, from that safety and health point of view, I normally take the stairs and go up, and I have no problem at all. पर उस दिन मुझे बहुत effort लगा, मुझे जैसे कोई चक्कर से आने वाले हों। तो anyway, I made the effort and I went up and I got my blood test done, और उसके बाद मैं घर आ गया। Now next day early morning मुझे हॉस्पिटल से फोन आती है, और वो एक लेडी डॉक्टर है, वो कहती है माय नेम इज डॉक्टर वैलेरी, एंड कैन यू कम टू द हॉस्पिटल straight away. I said, why? What is the problem? She says, I can't tell you the problem over the phone, but it is something serious and you need to come straight away, pack your bags because you might have to stay here for a couple of days. मैंने कहा, listen, I'm a doctor as well. I didn't tell her I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of philosophy. So she said, okay, if you're a doctor, I'll let you know. We are suspecting that you have leukemia. I said, now that is a serious matter. So she says, how fast can you get here? I said, I'll be there within an hour. तो हमने अपना बैग पैक किया और बबली जी drove me up to the hospital. और इस दौरान मुझे ध्यान आया, मैंने कहा मैंने तो 2 दिन बाद वो सत्संग करना है सिंगापुर वाला, तो वो I don't want to let them down, so I better inform them. तो मैंने वहाँ उनको फोन करके बोला, भाई देखिए ऐसे है और I don't know what's going to happen and I might not be able to do the satsang on that particular day. तो आप अगर कोई alternate आपने बंदोबस्त करना है तो आप कर ले. वो कहने लगे, जी बिल्कुल आप परवाह मत करें, बल्कि we will be praying for you. आप आराम से जाइए और once you get the news, you please let us know. So Bubbly auntie drove me to the hospital और उन्होंने मुझे वहीं बाहर ही drop कर दिया and she came back home because she wasn't allowed to stay the night those days. Nobody is allowed to stay in the hospital excepting the patients themselves. And I went inside and वहाँ पे reception पे they had my name already on the list और जाते ही I didn't have to go through any registration. सीधा वो मुझे वो डॉक्टर वैलरी के ऑफिस में ले गए without any red tape or anything. और वो डॉक्टर वैलरी ने मुझे वहाँ बिठाया और she showed me the blood test reports and she started explaining again that we see some crystal formation here in your bloods and this is deficient and this is deficient and all that. So मैंने उसको फिर बोला, मैं कहा I don't understand all this. I'm not a medical doctor. If you can convey it to me in a real layman's terms, and then I'll know. And then she explained the whole thing to me again. And maybe out of confusion or whatever, I thought to myself, I still don't understand what she's saying. But whatever it seems to be something quite serious. So she says to me, before we admit you in the hospital, I want you to undergo another blood test. I said, okay. So she personally took me to get the blood test done. Normally doctors don't accompany you, सीधा भेज देते हैं किसी nurse के through या क्या. So she made sure that it is done. And then after that, she says, अभी ये result आने में 1 घंटा लगेगा. So you wait here or you come back and see me at this very spot after 1 hour. I said, okay. Now, in the meanwhile, Bubbly auntie was worried. So she got in touch with a friend of hers. And while she was talking to this friend, the friend said that I am getting this vision of Vijay's body being suspended in the air. और गुरुजी वहां पे हैं और गुरुजी अपना हाथ ऊपर फेरते हैं और फिर नीचे फेरते हैं, above and below. And गुरुजी कह रहे हैं कि मैं रिवर्स करता, कि मैं ये जो प्रॉब्लम सी ये रिवर्स करती है. और she said to Bubbly auntie कि तानू घबराने की कोई लोड़ नहीं है और आप रिलैक्स करें. You probably would have to go and pick him up from the hospital. So anyway, after an hour, I went back to the waiting room and I saw Dr. Valerie coming up to me very fast. And I said, the speed she's traveling towards me, she probably has bad news. But anyway, she came up and she smiled and she says, listen, I've got good news for you. Your fresh blood report says there is nothing in it. It's very clear. And we are all very surprised how this happened. Maybe there was a mix-up. So I thought to myself, I said, there cannot be a mix-up. This is my Guruji's working. He has just saved my life. and this is his doing. So anyway, I thanked her and rang Babli auntie and asked her to pick me up. And in the meanwhile, I rang that gentleman in Singapore and I gave him the news. And he was very delighted to hear that. और वो कहने लगे कि आपकी जब सुबह कॉल आई थी, हम उस दिन वो और उसकी वाइफ हम गए नहीं अपने काम पे. We stayed back and we prayed for you all day so that you get okay. So ये तो प्यार है. This is the love and kindness and compassion of our fellow Sangat which happened. So ये था जी मेरे लुकीमिया का सत्संग. जिथे मेहर तेरी उते सदा खुशियां. और गुरुजी की जो मेहर है is always flowing for his Sangat. All we have to do is we have to tap into it. And I always say spirituality is not a part-time job. Spirituality is a full-time job. You always have to be remembering the Lord's name, the Guru's name, and you always need to be in touch with him. अब ये नहीं है कि भी सुबह आप उठे और 5-10 मिनट आपने प्रेयर की और दोपहर में यू आर पासिंग मंदिर और गुरुद्वारा और आपने वहां पे माथा टेका और शाम को फिर 5-10 मिनट प्रेयर की एंड दैट्स द एंड ऑफ इट. नो, it is more serious than that. You need to devote more time than it. Somehow our minds should always be on the Guru, on the Almighty. The very apt example given is about these village women who go to fetch water from a nearby river, और वो मटका लेके जाती हैं, and when they fill up the water अपने सिर पे रख के वो वापस लाती हैं, and they are talking to each other, they are stopping on the way, buying groceries and doing all sorts of things, but उनकी जो attention है वो हमेशा उस मटके के ऊपर होती है, so that the मटका doesn't fall. So similarly, हमारा जो part of our mind should always be connected, should always be in communion with the Guru, with the Almighty. So that is the way it really should be. So I will now tell you about an experience we had. The first one was, the first two are about our health. The second one is about a business problem that we had a few years ago. This is around the time when the worldwide recession was just about to start. And during that period, my son's young wife had passed away, and leaving behind 4 very young kids, which he had to look after. Normally, our business day-to-day running is taken care of by my son, but उस time पे उसकी attention diverted थी, तो उसने किसी अपने junior staff member को depute किया. Normally he files all the tax returns. उसने उसके जिम्मे लगाया कि भाई ये tax return straightforward है, this is what is owed to us and this is what we have to pay based on our sale to the revenue, or he left it to him. And because this man was doing it for the first time, he made a big blunder और उसने tax underpay कर दिया. With a huge amount he underpaid it, which was later on discovered not by us but by the department. And they sent us a notice that we would come and do an audit on such and such day and you better have all these papers and all these files ready. It's like getting a raid, जैसे India में tax वालों का raid होता है. So an audit there is like a raid, but the only difference is कि वो आपको पहले इतला कर देते हैं and they let you know what the problem is. So on the allotted day they came. हमने आपस में meeting की और हमने कहा भाई this was a genuine mistake and we have to admit to it. So when that team came, so that is the first thing we did. But the inspector that was leading the team was a real hard nut, a real tough guy, a Greek, and he went through everything. And although we explained the reason and the circumstances about Kunal's wife's death and all that, and he said, no, I'm sorry, but I have to go by the rules and you will have to pay that amount back. We said that we are willing to do that. He says on top of that, there would be a hefty penalty and we will also be charging you interest. I said, ठीक है, what can we do? Or you'll have to pay it all in one go. और कहने लगा कि by tomorrow, I will calculate everything and send you a notice. So ये कह के वो सारी टीम चली गई. So we waited a day, 2 days, 1 week, a month, a year. 4-5 साल हो गए. We never got the notice. But the day they arrived, a friend of mine who is also a Sangat, I was talking to her and she said कि I am getting this message from Guruji and he's telling me कि विजय ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦਿਓ ਕੋਈ ਡਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ. मैं कुणाल ਦੇ ਆਫਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ कुणाल ਦੀ ਸੀਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਬੈਠਾ और मैं सारी calculations कर रहे हैं. So this was the message we got. So I knew things would not get out of control because it was a very strong message that I'd got. Anyway, 1 साल, 2 साल, 3 साल, 4 साल, 5 साल, we didn't hear anything back from the department. So we thought maybe they've lost the file, but no. So then one fine morning, we get a call from them, and it's a new inspector this time. The earlier one was transferred. So he says, in connection with that audit that was done, I'd like to come and meet you. So wo aaya. And my son again explained the circumstances and he said, we are willing to pay whatever is due. So he was very sympathetic. So he heard everything and he says, okay, what I'll do is I will let you pay that, but there will be no penalty. So he agreed not to impose any penalty on us, but you will have to pay the interest. और इतने में काफी साल हो गए थे. So my son said to him that if you had sent us a notice the way the earlier inspector had said that he'd send the notice the following morning, तो हम तो तब दे देते. Or so why should we have to pay the interest? He says, yes, that's a reasonable argument. So he waived off the interest as well. और उसके आने से पहले हमने अपने अकाउंटेंट से ये पूछा कि भाई, can we request the department to accept the payment in installments? So हमारा अकाउंटेंट कह लगा, no way, there's nothing doing, because those were difficult, hard times, recession times. He says the revenue department itself is short of funds, so they will insist that you pay everything in one go. So our own business was fairly down. हमने कहा बड़ी मुश्किल हो जाएगी if we have to pay. So reluctantly, my son requested the inspector. He says, can we pay in installments? He says, yes, no problem. How many installments do you want? He says. How many years do you want? तो उसने अपना calculate किया, whichever was the easiest for him to pay. उसने बोला जी कि ये इतने साल में हम देंगे और this is the amount we will be paying you. And he instantly accepted और उसने वहीं पे नोटिस बनाया और हैंड ओवर किया, and that really saved our skins and saved our business. So this was another experience that we had, Guruji's meher on us. Or I often think what Guruji used to say कि जो मैं देना चाहता, I was discussing this with Shastri Sahab the other day as well, कि जो मैं देना चाहता वो कोई मंगता ही नहीं है. Meaning we all go to Guruji and ask for material things like I did for this business problem that we had. But jo main dena chahta, nobody asked for that. And what is it that Guruji wants to give us? Guruji wants to give us something which is much more higher than the material things that we ask for. And once we get that, then material things will have no value at all. So what he wants to give us is spirituality. So he wants us to make the shift from the material to the spiritual. That's what he wants us to do. This reminds me of a little story I'd heard about Bulle Shah going to his Murshid. Murshid is Guru. It's a Urdu word which means Guru. So he goes to his Murshid, who is a farmer and who's working in his paddy field growing rice, transplanting rice from one field to another, जहाँ पे पहले standing water होता है, फिर दूसरा dry होता है. And Bulle Shah goes to him and she says he wants to know what is God. He wants to find God. और उसका मुर्शिद, उसका गुरु कहता है रब दा की पावना, इधरों पुटना और idhar lavna. So he's working on the paddy field. So he's transplanting those plant saplings. So he says, Rabda ki pavna idhru putna or udhar lavna. Meaning, you see, to know God, all you need to do is change your focus from the material to the spiritual. So what we also need to do is change our focus from the material to the spiritual. In remembrance, we can do that. Staying in the presence of Guruji, we can do that. But the point is that we have to be in connection as much as we can. Now, this brings me to another experience that I personally had, again to do with my health. About 4 years ago. 4 years ago, one fine morning, I woke up and my right eye was bloodshot, very red and sticking, and I couldn't see through it. I thought maybe it is a case of conjunctivitis and will be okay in 2-3 days, but it didn't get okay. And so what I did was I went to the local eye hospital, and there they checked me out and they gave me some eye drops, and they said, if it still doesn't heal, you come back to us in 3-4 days time. So I went back home, waited 3-4 days, nothing doing. So went back to them again. So they did an X-ray and they found that there was a growth at the back of my eye on top of the muscle. So eye के पीछे जो muscle होता है, उसके top पे there was an inflammation, a kind of a growth. So वो कहने लगे भाई, this has to be investigated. You'll have to come back and get an MRI done. ठीक? So went back, got an MRI done, and the MRI confirmed that there is a growth. Now growth means it could be ominous. वो जो surgeon थी, वो कहने लगी कि भाई we will have to do a biopsy to make sure that it is not malignant. And the way they do or used to do the biopsy was they take away a piece of your skull from the side of the eye and then make an insertion, take a sample, and then put that piece of skull back, patch it up again. That's the way they used to do it. So anyway, she gave me time and she said, you'll have to be admitted in the hospital and we'll have to carry this out. और उन्होंने next day afternoon में करना था. और before that, she asked me to go and get another MRI done. So I went, और वो MRI was quick enough for them to do. पर उसकी report आने में बड़ा time लग रहा था. And I was getting a bit irritated because I thought by the time I get the report and go back, the surgeon would have left. But anyway, when we got the report and I went back, and the surgeon was still there, and she said, normally I would be gone by this time and you would have had to come back again. But आज क्या हुआ कि we had ordered a machine, a robotic machine a few years ago, और वो हमारे पास आ नहीं रही थी, and this very morning that machine arrived. So which means कि we won't have to do the biopsy in the conventional old way. हम robotic तरीके से आपका sample लेंगे, which is much easier to do. They don't have to break open the side of the skull. So this was, and she said that suddenly that machine arrived this morning and we are all surprised how that happened. So you see the delay there in getting the MRI report, and then the surgeon staying back, and then the arrival of the machine, all that. तो वो बड़ा easily उन्होंने वो robotic तरीके से they took a sample and they give you a general anesthesia and they do that. And when I came around, gained my consciousness, I was in my hospital room, and the first sight I see is my daughter Bindya. She's sitting there across the room on the chair with a big buffet of red roses in her lap. About 50 buds of red red roses. And so the nurse took those from her because they don't want to keep it in the same room as the patient in case there is pollen in it or whatever. So anyway, 3-4 days time it took me before they would let me go home. And when we were going home, the same nurse came to us and she said, this is a beautiful bouquet that your daughter brought here. Why don't you take it back home with you? The only thing is, she cautioned us that don't keep it in your bedroom because it could irritate your eye. I said, okay. So we came home, and in the evening, I was sitting on my chair and Bubbly Auntie was putting eye drops in my eye. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I get this very strong aroma of roses. I was surprised and I asked Bubbly Auntie, I said, did you not keep that bouquet outside? She says, I have kept that bouquet about 60 meters away in the front house. You see, our son lives in the front house and we are in the little cottage at the back. And there is no way that aroma could have come from there. So I said, then what is this smell, this scent that I'm getting? So she says to me, she says, this is Guruji's smell that you're getting. Guruji is showing you his presence. So that scent lasted for a little while and filled the whole room with it. It's a very strong smell. And then suddenly that smell was gone. So it was a clear indication of Guruji's presence over there. So anyway, after a few days, my biopsy result came from Belfast. That's where the laboratory is where they send the biopsies to get the results for that. And I was called to the hospital, and the same surgeon, she told me, she said, bad news for you. You have lymphoma of the eye, which means you have cancer of the eye. And when Bubbly Auntie heard that, she started to cry, and we were surprised as to the indications we were getting that, Guruji's will be looking after us. And even we were getting messages from other friends and Sangat, who in turn were getting messages from Guruji saying that, ask him not to worry, everything will be okay. So anyway, there's nothing we could do, and they suggested that I would have to undergo the chemotherapy. And they gave me a date, and before they would start the chemotherapy, they asked me to come to the hospital. So they would prepare me for how, what I need to do, what I need to bring with me, and what are the do's and don'ts of that. And they said, you must bring 1 or 2 members of your family, because it's a long list of instructions. You won't remember. We'll give you the list as well, but we would explain to them too. So on a particular day, I, along with my son and Bubbly Auntie, we went to the hospital. And there, as we reached, there was the doctor that was on duty was a Moroccan. So he came out to meet us, and he says, I don't know why he said this. He says, I have some bad news for you. So he said, what's the bad news? He says, we got a fresh report. It was a nuclear report that they got from Belfast, the laboratory. And according to that new report, you don't have any cancer. There is no cancer there, no lymphoma. So I was wondering, why is he, that's good news. And why is he saying I have bad news? So maybe his English wasn't that strong, and he was trying to convey to us that, caused you all this inconvenience or whatever. But that was great news, and we were so relieved. And both Bubbly Auntie and I, before we went into the hospital to get this news, at the back of our minds, we were certain, for all the messages we were getting and the indication of that aroma that I got of those red roses, that, things would be all right. So, Gharayam, and there were big celebrations after that. So Guruji once again, came to our rescue. So there have been several experiences like that, small and big. Like Bubbly Auntie was saying, that samosa miracle that she had. All she got was a shell and no spicy potatoes or fried potatoes inside, because that would have caused her problem. And then that locket she gets just out of the blue, lady आके उनको वो locket देती हैं. So similarly, there have been many other experiences. Recently, I'd gone to the Bade Mandir, and we'd had our langar there, a very, very delicious langar, as it always is. So वो मैं खा रहा था, and I was thinking to myself, after I had finished the 2 chapatis there, and I said, how wonderful it would be if I got another chapati. But I was reluctant to ask. And then I looked up, and suddenly I still remember his name, one O'Brien uncle standing there, and he says to me, ek aur chapati chahiye hai. Can you imagine? I was thinking of, and I was very shy to ask. I said, you think this is a greedy old man looking for more chapatis? So he says, chapati aur chahiye? Yes. I said, yes. He says, any sabzi? I said, no, I still have the sabzi. So he gives me that additional chapati. and I wanted to share it with Bubbly Auntie, and I said, you take half of this. And she says, no, 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 you asked for it. So it's you, it's meant for you. So you should have it. Now, similarly, talking about these experiences, we in Ireland, we have this cook from Nepal. He's been with us for 20 plus years, and he's a Buddhist. He's been listening to our satsangs about Guruji and our talks about Guruji, and he never said it to us, but at the back of his mind, I think he'd also got influenced. So he had recently gone back to Nepal. He lives in a village there, and he was telling us that he'd gone to the adjoining village to see somebody on his bicycle, was about 7-8 kilometers away. And on his way back, he says, after he traveled about a kilometer or so, the chain of the bicycle would slipped. He put it on again, would slip again. He says that I must have, he said this must have happened about 100 times, and it would just not stay on the wheel. So he said, then he said, I remembered and I prayed to Guruji. I said, Guruji, it's getting dark. It's dangerous here. It's a narrow road. I could be hit by passing vehicles and all that. So he says, after I prayed, I tried to put on the chain again. And he says, it stayed. It stuck to the wheel. He says, then I traveled all the way back. He says, I was there for a month and a quarter, kept using that bike, and nothing really went wrong after that. So you see, these are the experiences, big, small. Some are very dramatic, some are small, some you don't even remember unless you think back and realize that you'd had an experience sent by Guruji. There was another case of my two granddaughters. They are twins, girls. They couldn't get admission in a very good school there. We were trying for many years, and then a request was sent to Guruji to intervene. And after a few months, we get a call from the school saying that we are now ready to admit them. And we know somebody who is on the committee. And that lady told us later on that I was surprised. They don't normally in a year they've never taken more than, say, if it is 90, they've never taken 91 children. And this time, that capacity was full, and still they sent you that request. They asked you to get them admitted. So there are many experiences like that. Now, this morning, my sister-in-law, Reva, who lives in Chandigarh, she was telling me that, you see, she's been Shirdi Sai Baba's disciple for 40 plus years. And then she, because of us, and because everybody sees, Guruji's name all over, all the automobiles here in Delhi and some in Chandigarh as well. And so she also started coming to the Bade Mandir with us and going to satsangs. But she would feel very guilty thinking that, you see, she's been Shirdi Sai Baba's Bhagat for so long, and now she's shifted allegiance. So one day she went for a satsang. Yeah, there she said, okay, I need a message to say that there is no difference, Guruji, between you and Shirdi Sai Baba. So she says the shabads that they were playing there, and suddenly at 12 o'clock sharp. 12 is the time when in Shirdi they play the Kakkad Aarti, as it is known as, and that Aarti started to play. So the Kakkad Aarti, and once it was finished, so now she got her reply. She went up to whoever was playing that and said, how did you get this Aarti? She said, what Aarti? We only play the Guruji's Shabads, and there is no way we would have played Shirdi Sai Baba's Aarti. So, but there were 2-3 other ladies with her who heard that. The one who was playing the disc, she wasn't aware of it. So anyway, so Reva got her answer. So she doesn't feel guilty anymore, and she's a very staunch Guruji devotee now. So I often wonder, I remember my first serious book on spirituality was the autobiography of a yogi, which I'm sure a lot of people like me, they get kick-started by reading that book. And there you see the Swamiji getting all the experiences and all the miracles happening there. And once I read that and I was wondering, I said, why are all these experiences happening to this one person? And I got my answer after a few years while reading Deepak Chopra's book on how to know God, in which he describes very well. He says, you see, we are on the ground and God, let us say, is up above in the sky. So once we start following him, so we are traveling from the ground and heading towards the sky. And he calls that the transition zone, the transition from the ground going up to the sky, Godward. So once you are on the path, you will start to get these experiences. And that is what happens with most of us, Sangat of Guruji, that we get all these experiences. Like I said, some of them are big, serious, very dramatic, and some of them may even escape your notice till you willfully look for them and analyze that. So these were our experiences, which by Guruji's meher, his kalyan, his grace, we've been getting. And Guruji has been looking after not just us, but his entire Sangat all these years. And we're all grateful to him. And this is our personal shukrana to him. Shukrana Guruji, Shukrana Guruji, Shukrana Guruji, Jai Guruji.